Hello everybody, and thanks for joining my channel here. Today we're going to cover the Oracle VirtualBox Manager and loading DOS 6.22. Doesn't that sound exciting? Well, for me it was exciting when I had first discovered. Of course, I've been using virtual machines for a while. I do have physical machines that I can do this with and load DOS on, but the virtual machines, no matter which one you use, is very nice because you can load different operating systems and experiment with them, and they'll create, a virtual computer is almost like a real physical computer, but you're not going to affect your environment that you're working in now. It's going to create virtual hard disks and virtual environments. Now, here I already have Slackware Linux, which is one of my favorites. I've been with Linux since it was 1.2.13, and I was compiling my own kernels, and I've been programming things for many years. I'm the author of Repair Pro, which is repairpro.org, which is a Windows-based application for technicians, which is done very well on the internet. But I've developed a bunch of different applications and worked with DOS and Turbo C, Borland Turbo C, and bash scripting, and I'd like to get into all that. And today we're just going to show you, as a first part of my series here, if let's say you have an old Doom 2 disc laying around, or a Quake disc, or some kind of game that you want to play and it's on a CD that you've dug up, and well, you know that it's not going to work. If we go under here, I have my Doom 2 CD in there. If you went to install it here, well, we know, because it's older, that it's incompatible with Windows. So, there are many different virtual machine software out there. You can get, I'm using the VirtualBox, but you can use VDOS. There's also DOSBox. Today we're going to go into it where we're going to recreate it just the way it used to be back in the day. We're going to use the original DOS diskettes for 6.22, and I do have floppies that I've already have here. I have the 3 setup disks that you would have used back in the day. I can make these available if people are interested enough in the video. I can provide some kind of link to these disks. So we're going to use these disks just like they're physical disks, and we're using a physical floppy drive, but we're going to use the virtual box instead. So the first thing we need to do is we want to go to machine, and we want to create a new machine. Now, for those wondering, is it difficult to install the virtual box? It really wasn't. You just want to Google the Oracle VM VirtualBox. It's a free download. You can download it, just accept all the defaults when you install it. It's not a big deal. And pretty much you're going to come up with a screen. This wouldn't be here. This is a machine that I had created. We can touch on that in the future if anyone's interested in wanting to know how to install Linux. But today is DOS. It's all about DOS. It's all about history. So we're going to go in here and we're going to create a new machine, and we're just going to call it DOS. We're going to hit next here. Now, back in the day, we really didn't need much memory. In fact, I think a machine, I didn't even have that much memory. None of us did back then. Now it's just, you've got tons of memory. So we're not going to be too concerned about memory here. We have a lot of room to play with. I'm just going to go with 2 for now, and that should be good enough. We're going to create a virtual hard disk now. We're going to use the VDI, which is a VirtualBox disk image, and we can dynamically allocate it, and that's perfectly fine. Now, the size of the virtual disk in megabytes, we can make this 800. I'll probably be deleting this virtual machine when I'm done anyway. You can play with the different sizes depending on what you need, but you really don't need much for DOS. We're going to create that. So now our machine has been created and it's powered off, but there are a few things that we need to do, because if we just clicked on this, in fact, let's do that and let's see what happens, because we don't have any boot disks. Okay, we have nothing to boot from because we haven't told it yet. So I double clicked it here, and you can see it tells us to select a startup disk. Now I could go ahead and do this and go from here and pick a startup disk, but I want to show you from the beginning here. Okay, we're going to go to the machine and settings, and pretty much all of this stuff is okay. You know, you can see our setting that we had set previously during the setup here as far as memory. Display for video memory, I like to put it up there. It's not going to hurt anything. You know, you can even enable these if you like. And here's what's most important is our storage. And also what we're going to be configuring is the audio part. And the audio part is pretty much already enabled, and it's going to emulate the Sound Blaster, which is what all of those games used back in the day. I mean, if you didn't have a Sound Blaster, you weren't cool. You know what I mean? I mean, you had to have a Sound Blaster. So for storage, what we are going to do is we're going to choose to boot from a virtual floppy file, and that file is the one that I had previously shown you. If we go into the vintage computing folder, and we're going to go into floppy disk images and DOS622. So here would be our 3 disks. And back in the day, you know, you'd have the floppy drive and you'd have these 3 physical disks from Microsoft, and here they are, and they're packaged together using WinISO, that you can use, you know, a plethora of different imaging applications to make floppies, and we can talk about that later. But these ones I had already downloaded, so they're all ready to go. So we're going to choose the setup disk 1, which is what we would boot from. And let's just check over these settings here to make sure that we have everything. Network I wouldn't worry about. Serial port really wouldn't worry about. We can enable the USB controller. Let's see what else we have here. We just want to make sure we have everything the way it should be here. That looks good. Okay, so once we have defined the setup disk, we're going to hit OK. And now we're going to double click this machine, and it's going to boot like we have a physical separate computer. And it's going to boot from the floppy drive, which is virtual, and it's going to boot that MS-DOS disk 1. So it's booting up here, and this is going to bring back memories for a lot of people, I'm sure. And we've come to our DOS setup. So we're going to press enter. We're going to configure our unallocated disk space. Now remember, this isn't your physical hard drive. You don't have to worry. This is a virtual drive that's created within the virtual box. So you can do anything with it. You can get a virus on it. It's not going to hurt your existing Windows setup here, okay? So we're going to configure unallocated space, and it says it's set up where we start your computer, and it is restarting the virtual computer. It's formatting the drive. The date and time is fine for me. I'm going to put things in the C:DOS folder. Now, just as you would switch a physical floppy, we have to specify setup disk 2. So how we do that is we go back into the machine, into the settings, into the storage area, click on the setup disk 1 image, and we're going to pick another virtual file, which is going to be disk number 2. So it's almost like we're physically swapping the floppies out of our floppy drive, but we don't actually have a floppy drive. So hit OK. Press enter. Now we're going to do the same thing for the final disk, which is disk 3. Go to storage, choose the virtual file, and we're going to choose disk 3. Click OK, press enter. Now it tells us to remove all of our disks from the floppy drive. So we're going to go to the machine into settings again, storage. Click on our setup disk 3, which is our final disk for DOS. click on the little disk here, and we're going to remove the disk from virtual drive. Okay? And then we're going to press enter. So now DOS is installed, and we're going to restart our computer by pressing enter. And it does bring back memories, doesn't it? Smart drive, huh? Good old smart drive. All right, we're going to do a directory here. Now, of course, the people who have worked with DOS since its beginnings, or maybe you've worked with it after its beginnings sometime in the past, you've realized that it really doesn't have much to it. You're not going to have any CD drivers or anything like that. Usually your sound drivers, you would have to use the config.sys file, and you would have to do a device equals in here for your sound blaster. But since we're using the virtual box, it does make it a little easier because it does have sound blaster emulation. So what we're going to do here is there are a few things we need to do because we have Doom on a CD, and we don't have CD access right now. Okay, so there's a couple things we need to do, and the first thing we need to do is we're going to mount a floppy which has a CD-ROM driver included on it, and we're going to extract those files and we're going to configure it. So let's go into machine, and just like we're swapping a disk out again, I'm going to go to storage, and I want to choose my disk that I previously made with WinISO, which is an image of the CD-ROM driver disk. So I'm going to go back into the vintage computing. Of course, this folder is my folder. You can configure and have files where you want. This is just where I'm putting them, and I have a floppy image folder, and I have a CD-ROM driver. I should delete that folder. I don't know why I have that there. I'm going to get rid of that. We're going to go into the floppy disk images, and this small collection here that I have of different things that I've created WinISO images for, so I can mount them. But we're going to choose the CD-ROM image, and we're going to hit OK. Now when we go into the A drive, we now have our CD-ROM.EXE file, which was on the virtual floppy that we just mounted. So what I want to do is I'm just going to create a directory called CD-ROM. I'm going to go back to the A drive, and I want to copy. I could just say CD-ROM.EXE, but I'm going to do all because there's only one file, so it's really not going to matter. And I'm going to put that into the CD-ROM folder. Now I'm going to go back to C, and I'm going to CD to the CD-ROM folder, and as you can see, there's our file. So what good is the file really? Well, it's no good the way it is because it's an executable file, and we need to extract it. It's a self-extracting file which within it contains a bunch of different files, and one of them that we need is the VIDE driver, which is a CD-ROM driver from back in the day. So we're going to run the CD-ROM program and let it extract the files. Now when we do a directory, you can see we have a bunch of different files. The one that I'm really interested in though is going to be the VIDE-CDD.SYS file. And there's also another one that we're going to be interested in, and that's going to be, I must have butter on my fingers, I don't know what's happening here, is the MSCDEX.EXE. You need that, and you're going to need that sys driver to get this CD to work. So let's go ahead and try to make this work here. Now back in the day, how you configured anything was through the config.sys file. So we're going to edit it, and that's going to bring us up here. And what we need to do is add a device statement in here for the VIDE sys file, and we have to specify a /d:, and we're using the MSCD001. Okay, that's going to be the device ID. Now as long as we use that same device ID with MSCDEX, we shouldn't have any problem. So we're going to save the file. Now we're going to want to go into our AutoExec BAT file, when these two files pretty much control everything when it comes to DOS. The boot up, the environment, the paths, all kinds of things, configurations. And what we're going to do in here is, for the heck of it, I'm just going to add to this path. You don't always have to do this, but it's nice because then no matter what folder you're in, you can call a batch file or a program and it will search that path statement first, and instead of you having to be in the current directory to run it. Okay, so that's something we'll touch on later. I want to get into some batch file programming, and I have a bunch of programs that I've written that hopefully I can teach some people some of that stuff, because it is interesting, at least to me, and I hope you're interested. Okay, now what we have to do here is we have to run the MSCDEX. So we're going to run MSCDEX, and we're going to do a /d : and we're going to use that same designation that we used in the config.sys file, that ID, which is MSCD001. Now we're going to hit Alt F, we're going to save that. And there is one more thing that we need to do in here under storage for the CD, and I'm going to hit this little CD and I'm going to say host drive D. Okay, I'm going to just change that to host drive D. I did try this before, you know, loading the drivers or not, and it did not work unless I had picked that option. So make sure that that CD here is set to host drive D here. Click OK. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're just going to close this virtual machine down, and we're going to boot it back up and see if I didn't make any typos or anything. Let's see if I didn't make any typos. It took a while to bring all this back into my memory. It's been a while. So it is loading the high mem. It does look like it's taking the CD driver good, and it does say that we have a drive D here. So let's try drive D now, and let's see if our Doom 2 disk shows up that we've put in there. And there it is. We have our Doom 2 CD loaded, and we're almost ready to check out a blast from the past here with Doom 2. But we first, as we all know, or whoever's ran Doom in the past, you have to do the install first. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to pick drive C for our install. We're going to pick Doom 2 is fine for the folder, it's the default. We'll hit Y to create the folder. It's going to copy all the files, and then it should be extracting some of the WAD files, and we've come up, it's so much faster now than back in the day. I remember just waiting. I mean, I was waiting, just waiting for it to install. We're going to go ahead here and we're going to choose the keyboard and mouse. We're going to use Sound Blaster for the playback device. All these could be fine as defaults unless you have some issues, but that should be fine. We're going to use the Sound Blaster for the sound effects device. The defaults here should be fine. And we're going to save the settings and run Doom, and let's see what we get here. And there it is. What a blast from the past. I hear sound. The sound is working. Let's do a new game for the heck of it here. Although I don't feel like getting addicted to this game anymore. I played this thing so much many years ago. Me and a friend of mine, we just had so much fun, and we would play this over the modem, and that took a little setting up. So that works there. It's great. Everything's working. Let's go ahead and exit out of here. and see what other files. See, back in the day, if you wanted to use it over the modem, you'd have to run the serial setup. Of course, let's try that just for good measure here. And what it's going to do is search for a modem, which I don't have, but let's go into the past here. See, I obviously don't have a modem, so it's not going to find one, but that's what it would look like. And there was also the IPX setup, which you could use to connect over an IPX connection if you were going to play over a local network. Now with me, I used to use NetWare Lite. I think it was NetWare Lite 3.11 or something like that. And it really worked great with Doom. I had it working perfectly. But again, what's nice about the virtual box, and is you can run any DOS program that you want to, pretty much any operating system. For me, I just have Linux on here. I'm a Linux guy from back in the day, so I have that on here, and of course the DOS, which I'll be doing some things with in the future. I want to do some batch file examples. If anyone's interested in that, we can get into some Borland C. We can get into creating some batch files. Back in the day, what would you do if you just wanted to run a program that was in a folder? Maybe you had a bunch of programs and you wanted to make a menu that you could pick, pick one for this, two for that. Those are all things that I'd like to do in the future, time permitting, of course. But for today, that was Oracle VM VirtualBox and DOS 6.22 and getting an old Doom 2 CD to run again. And I appreciate you viewing my video. If you like it, you can hit subscribe, and I appreciate your support. And for now, this is Frank saying have a good day, and thanks for watching my video.